everyone, welcome back to Cady and Cady. As promised, it's July, so we're back for Spider-Man!
He does what a spider can.
The Spider-Man Far From Home trailer is about to play, but if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame yet, stop watching because there's some serious spoilers about to come up. If you have seen Avengers Endgame, enjoy the trailer.
Everywhere I go. Fresh off the heels of Avengers Endgame, Spider-Man Far From Home kicks off the fourth phase, or ends the third phase. Not really clear on that. With a bang! Desperate to return to his semi-normal life after the undecimation, young Peter Parker joins his fellow classmates on an exciting class trip to Europe. Sadly, any hopes of returning to normalcy are dashed when Nick Fury and Donnie Darko show up with news of an impending apocalypse, and Spidey is forced to fight a bunch of elementals instead of telling MJ how he feels. I do not miss high school.
So, Cady, what did you think of Spider-Man Far From Home?
I thought it was fantastic. A great way to sort of start off or end or start off whatever phase we are on or going into, whatever. Yeah. I don't want to say I liked it more than Endgame. I mean, not Endgame.
Homecoming?
I don't want to say I liked it more than Homecoming, but I might have liked it more than Homecoming. James, did you like this movie? I
sure did. My initial reaction was, in fact, that I liked it more than Homecoming. And don't get me wrong, I really, really enjoyed Homecoming.
Homecoming is really good.
I feel like this one felt a little bit more, I don't want to say like a Spider-Man movie, because there have been so many of them with different directors and all sorts of things. But it felt, at least parts of it felt a lot more like the Sam Raimi films of yesteryear, which, even though they might not have aged as well as some of us imagine them have, they still kind of hold a soft spot in at least my heart. It was really exciting, unpredictable in many ways, and just it was generally just a very fun ride for me.
I think I missed the days when the Marvel movies, I mean, I love the whole, obviously, universe, but I kind of missed the days when they were, like, self-contained full stories that were, like, fun on their own, and this definitely was that. So.
Right, and well, that seems appropriate, because we're moving into this new saga. I think that's the term.
I'll accept it.
No, but I mean, like, the officially, everything, the first three phases are being titled the Infinity Saga, so I assume the next however many phases will be considered the saga.
Alright.
So...
I didn't know that.
That being said, before we say anything more, we should probably just issue a spoiler warning now, because we've decided that casting takes up too much time, and we'll talk about whatever actors we want to if it comes up.
Yeah, I feel like we kind of already know them all. At this point, in this movie at this point.
With the exception of, like, maybe two, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to mention, I did, as per usual, purchase the Spider-Man Far From Home Prelude comic, which was exactly Spider-Man Homecoming in comic form. Even though Spider-Man has died and come back and been to space and just done so many things since that movie. Come on, just give me something.
So the movie opens with an homage to Tony Stark, which the second it started, I was like, oh, okay, we're gonna do this. And then immediately, like, once the music happened, I was like, oh, someone's doing, like, a PowerPoint style, like, thing.
Specifically a high school style, yeah.
Which it was, and it was very funny, while at the same time, I out loud went, aw.
Yeah, it wasn't just an homage.
Yeah, well...
To
Tony,
Iron Man.
It was the ones we had lost, so it was Cap, it was...
Vision and Black Widow.
And, I mean, there are other Avengers, obviously, that... Well, no, I guess it wasn't. Yeah, everyone else.
It's literally just the people that died or are presumed dead because Cap went back and then...
Yeah.
Probably should have issued a warning for spoilers for Endgame. Oh well, the little sizzle reel was entertaining, but it sort of led into an overall entertaining sequence where the kids... They sort of give us a recap of everything that's happened. It's Betty Brant and the same guy from the first one, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, the kids.
Yeah, they're doing the morning announcements type thing for their school, and they explain that the decimation happened, and a lot of them disappeared, and then came back. Yes, they've renamed the decimation the Blip, because high school, I don't know. Is that like a generally society-wide accepted term, or is it like...
I like to think it's just that...
Yeah, they just like, we're going to call it the Blip.
Blipped.
I guess after everything's fixed, the air of, like, seriousness is a little bit taken away. It's like, oh, well, I wasn't even here. It did occur to me that while it was really nice that they sort of like, they delved in and they sort of explained to they were more or less talking to the audience.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, school was already in session. Unless it was like the first day of school, it's a little weird that they're explaining to all these people that went through this what happened. Mm-hmm. I'll look past it because, like I said, it was, they had like little sequences of like, there was like a band performance in the gym when the decimation happened, and then they showed footage of the band reappearing in the middle of a basketball game when the undecimation happened, and it was cool, and it brought us up to speed, and I really appreciate that they addressed it. Mm-hmm. But what happened to like people that were, I don't know, flying on airplanes when the decimation happened? When they snapped them back, did they just people using other forms of public transport? Why didn't Nick Fury just get run down by a car because he dissolved in the middle of the road? People in public bathrooms, on public toilets, just like right on someone's lap. Just
the things that they never think of to address in movies.
Well, but that brings me to the point that, like, honestly, there's a part of me that would really love, and of course it'll probably never happen, but like an official MCU documentary style like miniseries, maybe on Disney Plus,
that'd be great.
That just deals with life after the decimation. Because I would love to just like the ramifications of something so huge happening on society. It would be really fascinating, and that's one thing they haven't really done. They haven't done a documentary yet. They've done heist movies and shit like that.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the notes that I had when we were doing predictions for Endgame. Is I wanted that. I wanted to have like them follow along with somebody instead of skipping them. I mean, I know they had to do it, and that makes sense.
The movie was already 3 hours and 20 minutes.
And I mean, we sort of got it with Finding Cassie. Yeah. So yeah, it's fine.
Oh yeah, that also brings me sort of to my next point. Is like there's this new character, Brad, who I guess does actually exist in the comics. I don't know anything about his origins, but that character does exist. When the decimation happened, I guess he was like a small, scrawny kid that nobody paid any attention to, and now he's like the same age as everyone else, and he's hot, I guess. But that, like, in my mind, they talked about him like he was like a peer before. But if he didn't get dissolved, and they did, then
why was he still there?
Well, exactly. Why was he still in high school? So, I mean, there's nothing they say that explicitly says that he couldn't have just been like, I don't know how many grades are in their school, for one. But also, he could have just been like someone's middle school brother that most people kind of knew. And
yeah, they definitely didn't like.
But they did talk about how like some of the characters that got decimated or blipped are now younger than their younger siblings because they didn't age during those 5 years. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of in line with what I was saying.
One of the things that they ended up kind of doing throughout the movie, well, I guess a lot throughout the movie, with Flash, that character. I don't know his actual name.
Flash Thompson.
Yes. And that's his actual name, like Flash isn't like a nickname.
Yeah, no, his name's actually, as far as I know, he was in the first Sam Raimi Spider movie played by Joe Manganiello. That's the one.
He was live streaming and like vlogging like the whole time, and then like there was a sequence at the end where like Spider-Man was swinging on his web with his phone, like, and it's just I don't know if they were like doing that to like try to show that like it's cool to like. It was just very weird that it was. What am I trying to say?
This is where we're at as a society?
Yeah.
That's high school life now?
It was like, yeah. I think that's what it is. Like, it was just... It's
like everyone has to have, like, an online social media presence.
That generation, like, yeah.
And even to people as relatively close to that generation as we are, it's a little bit jarring. It's not criticism.
No, it was just something I noticed a lot. I was like, wow, is that really that, like... I guess it is. I mean...
And here we are filming
a YouTube video. But, I mean, it was so, like... And like, it became, like, a plot point because, like, it was used to, like, track where they were and, like... It was just very weird to see in such like a huge capacity, I guess.
Since we weren't doing these when Homecoming came out, we should probably address the whole MJ conundrum. Mm. No, not that. Specifically, that like this movie opens, and honestly, the pacing at the beginning was a little bit wonky for me. It's understandable because they had a lot to explain before they get into the main story.
Yeah.
So it's not really criticism, it's just observation. But one thing that sort of hit me was like the last Spider-Man solo movie that we saw, he was so in love with Liz. Like, he was just fascinated with her. He was like, oh man, she's like the girl of my dreams and all that stuff. And at the beginning of this movie, he's already, like, super into MJ.
Well, I mean, I guess it kind of shows, too, like, we don't really know how much time has passed between the two. And also, like, high school love, so fleeting.
Well, those are exactly the points that I have written down here. I was like, I mean, sure, there's been a lot of stuff, but I feel like there's a part of me that doesn't like it when things like that happen often. It doesn't feel earned, even if you can reason it away. But the fact that he's a 16-year-old boy, yep. I don't miss high school either, Cady.
That said, it was a lot of, like, the interactions between the two of them were, like, awkward and adorable, and I loved it. And then Ned and, his... Betty, yep. His vacation girlfriend, that was...
Yeah, and I mean,
so funny.
Once they got into it, I was totally fine with it. It was just like it came out of nowhere, like how, like I was sort of expecting him to like spend the movie sort of realizing that he liked MJ, and it just was there, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, well, maybe, you know, when he was in space, like dissolving, he like thought of her last minute, and was like, oh, I really do like her.
I mean, why wouldn't he? She's delightful. My next note is about the first twist, which may be the only twist, but you know what I'm talking about.
Let's see if anything specifically before Mysterio. Just things about how Also Happy and Aunt May were fucking hilarious.
You could have left a word off the end of that sentence.
Yeah.
They humped at least once. You know they did. And
then,
that's why they're not together anymore.
But yeah, I mean, because then it was like it was almost like the weird kind of like parallel too, where he sat down with them and he was like, we have to have a serious talk about your relationship, like what's going on, and they were both like, whatever, and like different.
One of them saw them as dating, and one of them was like, oh, we're just hanging out. Yeah,
and then meanwhile his whole like drama in Europe and like with MJ, it was very funny.
Yeah, I mean, and it's sort of. It feels appropriate, especially in this kind of movie, because like the first one was sort of, what if there was a teen comedy, but the main character happened to be a superhero on the side?
Yeah.
And this one sort of continued that. It felt a little bit more mainstream superhero, which is fine because he's growing as a person. And if you didn't heed the spoiler warning before, you probably should now, because I'm going to get into the first major sort of twist. First of all, Jake Gyllenhaal as Quentin Beck, Mysterio. I don't really know enough about Quentin Beck in the comics to really have an opinion. I know enough about Mysterio to sort of have a sense for what the character does. And going into this movie, having seen some of the trailers, and they're talking about multiverses, and he's doing all this magic and stuff, I was really worried that he was going to be just a total departure from the original. Obviously, I know that Quentin Beck's whole thing, or at least Mysterio's whole thing in the comics, is he's a master of special effects. He's had a lot of special effects training, and he decides to turn it into a supervillain career. Here, they're talking about multiverses, and they'd sort of been setting up for it. Endgame had the Avengers going back and messing with time, and that's not how it works. I don't care. I don't know who else is still watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but this season at least seems to mostly just be existing in its own pocket timeline, which I'm not really sure how I feel about. But the point is, I knew who Mysterio was, but there were all these other things that were sort of suggesting that might be the direction they were going. Plus, the way that his powers looked somewhat reminiscent of, like, Doctor Strange and other sort of magical characters that we've seen. But Jake Gyllenhaal, universally cast as sort of a mildly unhinged, troubled person. Weird, unsettling, in almost everything he's done since Donnie Darko. I haven't actually gotten to the crux of this yet. That doesn't happen. It turns out halfway through the movie that he was running a long con to get a hold of Stark tech that he knew was being left to Peter Parker. I sort of realized it wasn't when he said, oh yes, there are multiple Earths, and I'm from a different Earth, and this one is, your Earth is Earth 616, which, as we all know, is the main timeline from the comics. And then the other one he said, I think, was one where Spider-Man was British. It wasn't that, because that could have just been, like, it could have been him talking out of his ass, but it could also have been just like, oh, we're going to put this in there as a little nod.
Why do you say Spider-Man was British?
I looked it up last night. Earth 833 is an alternate timeline where I guess Spider-Man was. But yes, that could have just been like a little wink to everyone. It's like, oh yeah, Earth 616. That's something in the comics. People will recognize that. Mm-hmm. It was actually after that, when he was explaining the whole thing about his family being killed by the elementals and how the elementals appeared in these 4 spots around the Earth, and just the whole bit. It's the way that he delivered it. And this is all props to Jake Gyllenhaal. Every line, that's when I realized that he was totally full of shit, or at least fully suspected it, because every line was delivered well enough that the characters could believe it, but there was just a hint in his micro expressions and the way that he was talking that made it sound like inside he was thinking, oh my god, they're buying this. I can't believe they're buying this. They're really buying this. My god, these people are stupid. And when the twist finally came, I was not only super relieved, but also like, I was just like, good for you, Jake. Yeah. You sold that.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Mysterio. and I had seen like a trailer, and it did look very much like Doctor Strange. So I was like, oh, is like some sort of character. So I did ask a friend, Will, if like, what is he, magic? Like, what's going on? And he like just briefly was like, well, he's kind of like a magician, like a street magician type magician, like where it's not like actual magic,
practical
like,
magic.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, whatever. And that's like all that I really like asked about, because I didn't want to like get too far into it. But yeah, so I wasn't expecting quite that much of like a reveal. And it's weird because that part of it, like when he was talking about like, oh, this is the universe, I was like, well, first of all, please no, like I can't handle, like there was time travel sort of, I can't handle like universe stuff. Yep. That's why I stopped like reading X-Men like back in high school.
It's why I couldn't get into the comics in the first place, is because by the time I was born there were already like 40 years of comics that I could never really just break in.
So I was like,
I need one. That's why I like the MCU.
I'll give it a shot. Once that reveal happened and I thought about it, it wasn't necessarily that moment that I was like, that's really weird. It was how focused on Peter he was. He was like, you're a good kid, Peter. Like, I'm so, like, I was like, you've known him for like an hour, dude. Like, what? And he like goes up on the roof and he's like, it's okay, kid. Look, like, you do what you need to do. You go find, and like, that, it felt so like over the top, but like in the different way, where it was like, there's no reason that even if you're a great guy from another universe, you're going to be talking like this to like a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, yeah, nice guy aside, when Peter handed the tech over to him, I was like, what are you doing? You've known this guy for like a week. Yeah, well, what's going on?
Even before then, too. And he just had dropped on the ground. He's like, oh, it was just laying on the ground. I was like,
Yeah, Tony, come on. I'm able to excuse the Peter making that stupid mistake because, again, high school, even if he's not dumb enough, it's like there's that subconscious, it's like, I don't want this responsibility, so I need to find some way to shove it off.
He's still mourning Tony's loss too. Like that was like a father figure to him, so he was looking for that like next person to kind of latch onto, and he was super caring, seemed to be like, super genuine, helped him fight the thing and save the people. So
I mean, interesting that you bring that up, the father figure thing, because we never really had a chance to talk about it because we haven't done a main Spider-Man movie. In the first Spider-Man, Homecoming, there was that one line about things that had happened and how May couldn't find out he was Spider-Man because of everything that had happened, and he didn't want to put any more stress on her. And it was everyone sort of assumed that was the origin story that we all know and we didn't really need to see again. In this movie, and I didn't notice this watching, but I did a little research last night, he is wearing a backpack that has the initials BFP.
The trunk that he initially packed,
that might
his
be
suitcase, yeah.
It says BFP on it, and those are Benjamin Franklin Parker. Yeah. So obviously he did exist, and I'd still kind of like to know just like the mini bits about what happened, but it's also kind of strange. I mean, like, I know we've experienced his sort of father-son relationship with Tony, but maybe it's because Ben died relatively recently that he just sort of latched on so hard, but at the same time it's kind of weird that he hasn't been mentioned at all. Now it's all Tony Stark, this guy that he has known for a few years, but he knew Ben for like his entire childhood.
Yeah, I think it wasn't just the father figure thing. I think it was the fact that like it was acknowledged by him, and actually Quentin did it too. Like, don't ever apologize for being like the smartest person in the room, and like own the fact that you're smart. You're a kid, but you're smart. And
Hamilton would approve.
but I mean, it just felt like so much so soon, which is why when it finally happened, I was like, oh damn, that's pretty crazy. And then with his crew, it went around and like linked them back to movies.
I was kind of hoping that like all of them would be like that, or even just a few. Maybe not all of them, but like because it was pretty much just him and what was his name? William Ginter Riva. William Ginter Riva is a guy who used to work at Stark Industries, now works for Quentin Beck, who also used to work at Stark Industries.
Created Barf before it was called Barf.
Yes.
Was very salty.
Was fired after it was called Barf, and upset that they called his masterwork Barf. William Ginter Riva they cut to a scene of the first Iron Man with Obadiah Stane yelling at the guy, saying, "Tony Stark created this in a cave!" And well, you don't really get in this movie. They cut to an angle where they're looking directly at the guy's face, but in the original Iron Man, they do not.
Well, they said it was archival footage.
That bit was not the close up of his face, because you were sort of seeing him from like this angle, so it could have been another actor. It's not. I confirmed that, and not only is it the same actor, but that's the kid who played Alfie in A Christmas Story.
That's right, because in Iron Man, I knew that.
I hadn't.
Oh, I thought it was with you that we had to discover that someone.
No. To be fair, I don't know The Christmas Story as much as everybody else seems to. I've seen it like once in my entire life.
We put it on at Christmas time.
That makes sense. It's that and A Wonderful Life.
Anyway, Barf, for those of you who may not know, is that technology from Civil War that Quentin created and Tony used to help like go in and like alter traumatic memories and just
his therapy holograms.
Yes.
We weren't talking about literal barf.
Blech.
That wouldn't be a very good invention.
Anyone can. Everyone's invented that at some point. Another reason too that I was a little bit relieved when there was that big reveal, because I was accepting it. I was like, fine, another alien, whatever, it's cool. But I like that it was another villain who was a normal person who may have had like extra special skills or like smarts or whatever, and like felt wronged and was trying to like right it. I don't think we've had that really since Black Panther.
Yeah,
it was an actual human person for actual human person reasons.
And unlike in Black Panther, though, this character, like, if he had applied his skills to being a hero, he probably could have done it.
Yeah.
But he was pissed off at Stark, and he just wanted the quick fix. He wanted to be the new Tony Stark. He didn't want to start at the bottom. The point is, they managed to make Mysterio, for those of you who know him in the comics, not only not lame, they made him cool. All of his like he has access to all these Stark drones, or former Stark drones, that they fly and they can shoot, fire and lightning and whatever you need, and they can project holograms.
Practical effects to the holograms.
And in many ways, that makes way more sense than any other explanation that the comics have had throughout the years for the things that he can do. Now we live in a world where drones are a real thing, and while they might not be quite at that level, and I still don't understand how
Stark drones.
How our current holograms work. I don't know how Tupac appeared in that concert. So there's probably some elements of it that don't quite stand up to modern scrutiny, but that doesn't mean it's not. We're already in we're in the MCU, so yeah. And
there were probably at least two separate sequences where Peter was like trapped in that world where Mysterio was messing with his brain.
Yep.
I think the first one especially, where like they were at that warehouse or whatever, like really, really reminded me of like the certain sequences from Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
Just like the animation of it, really. It's dudes,
watch it.
Please. But it reminded me of that a little bit. I don't know if it was intentional or just happenstance because of the way that it was done with like, whatever, but it was so pretty and it made me happy.
Yeah. There was a part of me, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed those sequences from an artistic standpoint. They're great. But there were a couple of moments, like when he was trapped inside, like, Mysterio's helmet, and then they cut back to him being outside, and like, just from a logical standpoint, we tend to think of the camera as being like an invisible viewer, but he was seeing that hologram and we were seeing it from out here, so there was a part of me that sort of like, it doesn't necessarily work quite right from a technical standpoint, but at that point it didn't really matter.
Yeah. There was a cool moment too in that same sequence where like it cut back from like over Mysterio's shoulder and we saw like some of the hologram stuff around Peter. Like,
from the outside.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
Which we got to see later.
Yeah.
It was a really cool effect. I'm not sure that that's what holograms would look like from the inside, but again, I don't understand how holograms work in modern technology, or even... Yeah, because I thought you need something to cast light on. Light's invisible until it hits something. That's why, in a dark room, if there's no dust in the air and you shine a light on the floor, it's just a circle of light. There's no stream. There's got to be something there. But they do it now. Prince was in the Super Bowl a few years ago after he died. I don't know.
There's that Japanese character whose name I can't remember, who does concerts all the time.
You're thinking of the Doctor from Voyager.
No. Anyway.
Who are you thinking of?
I can't remember her name. She's like she's a made-up character. And
We're talking about a fictional character?
Yeah.
From what?
Japanese music. Like,
okay.
She's a character that, like...
You're thinking of Krieger's wife.
Anyway. Like, it looks like she's, like, an anime character up on stage, like, with the concerts that they do. It's pretty cool. Yeah. But
Modern
anyway.
times.
Yeah. Crazy.
I just want everyone to know, I did check Google Maps to find out how long it would take to get from Prague to Berlin by train. About 4 hours. So that checks out.
Nice. So when they were in London later, they go to London. There's a sequence where, like, Peter's on the bridge that's sort of been, like, destroyed, and, like, the holograms have sort of, like, stopped working, and some of the drones are, like, after him, and, like, there's a whole big mess going on. And earlier in the film, he had been talking with Happy about, hey, I can't do this, like, I'm not ready for it, and he was like, dude, Tony was never ready for it either. Like, I see, like, you're the same that way, and, like, there's a moment where, like, Peter was putting together the spider suit, and Happy was... like, oh, look, it's like Tony all over again kind of thing. So then later, when he's on the bridge, there's a moment which I just thought was kind of cool as a parallel, where he picks up, like, a broken sign as a shield, and he puts together this device that's like Thor's hammer, because it has, like, the shockwave thing, and just, like...
I was wondering what the other thing... Like, I got the shield, and it didn't connect it. You're right. He was literally Cap from the end of Endgame.
Yes. Yeah, and it was just, and especially because, like, there was that whole moment earlier where it was like, dude, no one's ever ready, you just gotta do it, that's what you gotta do, and it was just, I thought it was awesome, I liked it a lot.
I do appreciate that you brought that up, because to be honest, there were a couple, well, maybe even just the one, moments that didn't exactly, like, there are a couple lines that didn't exactly sit right with me, and one of them was that little speech that Happy gave about how Tony Stark second-guessed everything he did, which might have been true toward the end of his run in the MCU, but at the beginning, he did not do that at all. He just did whatever the hell he wanted. Obviously, it has been true, but it was not always true, and the way he was talking made it sound... But obviously, maybe he was just saying what Peter needed to hear.
Well, that too, but also, like, I mean, we only saw, like, the movie stuff, so we saw, like, after that, who knows how long they've known each other. Well, I guess we do know how long they've known each other. But
he was a happy-go-lucky playboy right up until Iron Man, and even then it lasted for a few years before he was finally like, oh, we need to build a suit of armor around the world.
I can buy that he would second-guess things and, like, go all in on, like, not like, big things, but I mean, like... He was
like the biggest narcissist ever.
Regardless, it very well could have been and probably was just what Peter needed to hear. But
it was true enough from Peter's experience that it worked. So.
It was good. And then I love who did he call it when they played AC/DC?
Oh, I love Led Zeppelin.
Goddamn kids.
Martin Starr, of course, reappearing in this movie as Mr. Harrington. First of all, it's really nice to see Martin Starr playing anything other than a douchebag. I mean, he plays douchebag really well, but he also, like, his first big role was on Freaks and Geeks, where he played, like, the sweetest guy ever. And here, I wouldn't say he's the sweetest guy ever, but he's a nice guy. He's a little bit naive and kind of weird, but the reason I bring him up... Oh, also, we got a new science teacher, in addition to Mr. Harrington, played by B.J. Smoove, who you might know from several seasons of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Very funny man. But anyway, Martin Starr did not premiere in the MCU in Spider-Man Homecoming. He was actually... He didn't even have a line. He was in one shot in The Incredible Hulk.
See, I wouldn't...
Well, the interesting thing... This is really just trivia. It's not even about the movie.
That's the one with Ed Norton, right?
Ed Norton.
I've seen it.
There's a scene in which he's trying to sneak into a college, but you need, like, access, so he dresses up as a pizza man, and he's sneaking in to bring the pizza so he can talk to that guy from Oh Brother Where Art Thou with the teeth.
Yeah.
And he sneaks in with the pizza, and then he just gives the pizza to some random guy. And the guy in the computer lab looks up from his computer and holds up a slice and smiles at him, and that's Martin Starr.
Huh.
And there's no reason that character could not be Mr. Harrington. And just as relevantly, well, not really as relevantly, but another fun bit of trivia, is that in the novelization of that movie, in the movie, he's just called Computer Nerd in the credits. In the novelization, that character's identified as Amadeus Cho. Huh. You know, the Asian guy?
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it was Mr. Harrington. In fact, Kevin Feige came out and said, well, he didn't say that it was Harrington, but he said there's no reason it couldn't be. So, yeah, I just assume Mr. Harrington... In fact, I'm pretty sure the Marvel Wiki says that he worked at that university before he started working, so...
I like that.
Yeah.
That's silly. A few other little moments that were great, like where they end up in the Queen's vault. So they end up in the vault and they're like, there's a drone that's coming after them, and like there's a whole thing, and then they go to lock themselves in, I think, with the actual crown, and Happy picks up like I think it was like
an actual shield,
trash can lid.
It was a shield. It was like an old old shield.
It was. You're right. Yeah. I had a very like
a Roman shield.
Yeah, it reminded me very much of what's that thing called?
A shield, a plate, a disc.
No, it's a story, Greek story.
The Aegis?
With the Gorgon. And he needed shield.
Clash of the Titans?
Clash of the Titans, wow.
That's not a Greek story, just for the record. It's based off of Greek mythology.
Well, Greek mythology, you know, the Gorgons, is whatever. Regardless, I had a moment where I was like, hilarious. But he turns around as they're, like, going into the thing and, like, tries to, like, huck the shield at the thing. And I was like, oh, and he drops it. And he's like, I can't do that.
He didn't drop it. He just terrible aim.
He's like, I can't do that. And just, like, pulls it over. It's so funny.
Yeah.
It was great.
So, yeah, the other... I mean, we've gone through most of our notes, but we absolutely have to talk about both end credits scenes because they're both pretty significant. One a little bit more so than the other, but the other one could be significant. We just don't know quite how yet.
Yeah. So the first one, the main
mid-credit scene
is Peter is taking MJ on a ride. I'm assuming to get her somewhere quickly. Like, web slinging, and, you know...
It's faster than the bus.
Yeah. They land, and he's gonna go head off, and then a news bulletin comes up, and... on one of
the big screens. We're talking about Madison Square Garden type. Yeah,
like Times Square screens. It is a news broadcast of last minute footage from Mysterio that he ended up taking right at the end that was all edited together to make it seem that Spider-Man was behind the whole attack. Wouldn't you know it, Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker.
Just as importantly, the person broadcasting this, it's thedailybugle.net. Instead of, just the Daily Bugle.
Yeah.
In this world, I guess, finally we have the Daily Bugle, and it's an online blog, vlog, whatever you want to call it.
Which, again, with the weird vlogging times and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Run by one J. Jonah Jameson. Which by itself is, okay, that makes sense, sure, whatever. But it's actually J.K. Simmons.
Which was hilarious.
J.K. Simmons. Probably the first actor, and one of the only probably moving forward, to jump across and play the same character from another franchise. Mm-hmm. And it was a fun little moment. It was a really great, way to bring J.K. Simmons, or not J.K. Simmons, J.J. into the MCU, because he's sort of presented as a sort of Alex Jones type character, talking conspiracy theories, and Mysterio is the one true hero that we've all known for a week, and Spider-Man murdered him. And it not only did it feel a little too real, which made it kind of funnier, really. I don't think anyone expected that to happen. It was a nice, funny moment that honestly the little kids probably don't even get.
Well, yeah, in the middle of Times Square even, name dropped, there's a picture goes up, Spider-Man's just sitting there, so it's...
Yes, he identified Spider-Man as Peter Parker, which is a huge deal to begin with, but they also show a picture, so there's no doubt.
Yeah.
The movie, that scene literally just ends with Peter going, "Oh no!" And then credits.
Well, I think he was going to say a swear word, and then it cut out.
It was great to see J.K. Simmons. It's great to have the Daily Bugle. I really appreciate the fact that MJ reacted the way that a normal person would to that whole thing, not what's her name?
Oh, Kirsten Dunst?
Kirsten Dunst, or any of I was going to say Lois Lane's. The MJ of the comics, "Ooh, I'm swinging through the air and it's magical." She was screaming the whole time like a totally sane person. Which I appreciate.
They're all messed up and she's never doing that again.
Yep. As for the whole Peter Parker no longer having a secret identity thing, I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I'm excited to see where they go with it.
Well, it's kind of a weird parallel to Iron Man too, if you're looking at it that way.
Oh, absolutely.
He purposely said it and I am Iron Man, and now
and sort of crashed the whole, because the whole MCU might have been completely different if they hadn't decided, you know what, he's not going to have a secret identity.
Yeah, because wasn't there was a version in one of the comics where he posed as his own bodyguard.
I'm pretty sure that's how it was.
Oh, was it? Okay.
That's his origin. Is for the longest time he had a secret identity, and it was a bodyguard that was Iron Man. Everyone knew Iron Man existed, but nobody knew who it was. It's been an even bigger deal for Spider-Man because, first of all, he has a regular life to maintain, as opposed to all these other superheroes. Pretty much just hang out with other superheroes. They seem to, they don't. But also, Spider-Man didn't reveal his secret identity in the comics until the Civil War, not the Americans, you know what I mean. And now it's we're going into a new phase, and like I said, I'm excited to see it. And there's a part of it that also makes perfect sense to me, because, let's be honest, in this modern age, and this is sort of a theme in the movie, as you mentioned, keeping a secret identity with all these, literally everyone's walking around with a high-definition camera in their pocket, it's really not feasible. So I want to see where they're going to go with it, because honestly, it sort of makes sense.
And with the whole the secret identity being difficult to maintain, obviously Ned found out in the first movie. MJ had suspected all along and called him on it.
Yeah.
And was still surprised that she was right, because you never think you're really right. And then that kid. Who's that? That kid was
Brad.
Brad. Look, he sneaks off. What's going on?
He did not mention Spider-Man, but still,
Spider-Man.
It's just a hop, skip, and a jump from there. Everything has timestamps on it. People take footage of Spider-Man in the city, and then people watch it, and they're like, "Huh? Yeah, I noticed that Peter's never around when these things happen. What's that about?" And then the end credits scene. Fury and Hill are driving around, talking about, S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff, and then both of them
say a couple things that are well, they wouldn't really say that, you're going to tell them it happened? You really need to tell them it happened. Tell who?
Yeah. And then they morph back into Skrulls. You might actually be better qualified to comment on this in the context of, because you've seen Captain Marvel and you've seen this. Do you know anything about the Skrulls in the comic?
No.
Okay. Within this, it just seems kind of a funny little... But obviously, because they had a little conversation, and then they call Nick Fury on the phone, and they cut to him vacationing in Tahiti, which is immediately revealed to be a hologram on a spaceship, and he's off in space somewhere.
Yeah.
And so clearly they're setting something up.
But and it's really weird, because I thought about it immediately after, too. There were a couple of sequences when it was really Fury, when I was
Yeah, because it was him for the whole movie, except when it was Mysterio.
Right.
No, it was the Skrull for the whole movie. Talos.
Yes.
Except when it was Mysterio.
I'm trying to remember what there was a specific line.
They're asking why Spider-Man is asking why S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't go to literally any of the other heroes.
That whole thing, yes. That
and
whole
one
part.
of them they list is Captain Marvel, and he says, "Do not invoke her name."
That was part of it, but also just the whole, both of them, Hill too, like, were like...
They did seem a little off, and I didn't realize it until afterwards.
There was a thing that Hill...
First of all, Nick Fury didn't swear at all, as far as I know. Maybe once.
I think he did once.
But it was one of the B-list swears, not Samuel Jackson's normal fare at all.
It might have been a fuck.
It wasn't.
No? Alright. No,
it's PG-13. I know they get one, but MCU never does that. That's
true. They sort of trail off. Like I think that's what Spider-Man was going to say at the end, where he's like, oh, you know, whatever. But there was that, and then there was a sequence where someone said something to, I think Happy was talking to Fury, and he was like, dude, you didn't even know. And he was like, I totally did know. And he was like, he didn't know. And I was like, that's not their normal dynamic. Once I found out that those were the two funny Skrulls from the last movie, or 2 movies ago. But yeah, and then that one too, I was like, that's a weird thing to say.
You're right.
But I had forgotten about it. But there were just little
knowing
things.
that and rewatching it will be interesting, because there are probably a bunch of little moments. But the reason it's interesting beyond that is because there's a whole... Well, first of all, the Skrulls in the comics are not nearly the sort of victimized refugees that they were presented as in Captain Marvel. They're just as bad as the Kree. They want to conquer the universe too. They hate the Kree. They fight each other, but
in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., didn't they set that up a little bit too, though? I don't
think the Skrull were ever mentioned.
Just the Kree.
It's just been the Kree. The Skrulls literally debuted in the MCU. Captain Marvel. But in the comics, there's a whole long arc called the Secret Invasion, in which it's revealed that the Skrulls have been slowly infiltrating the Earth by, assuming the identities of superheroes. Yeah. And it's like a whole big thing. The way that they were presented in Captain Marvel, it seemed almost like that's definitely not the plan here. But at the same time, first of all, he said, do not invoke her name. Which is not a thing you say about someone that you love. Even though that movie... It's been 30 years since that movie took place, if you account for the 5-year gap. A lot can happen in 30 years. Maybe they don't like her anymore. Maybe they finally got back on their feet, cosmically speaking, and decided to kind of be dicks again. That big huge ship at the end that... Exactly. And so... Yeah, it's entirely possible that that's sort of the direction we're heading in here, and if that's what they're setting up for, this was the right way to do it, though it seems a little early to reveal that shit. But then looking at it that way, though, if they had to check in with Fury and be like, hey, this stuff happened, does that mean Fury had I don't feel like going to Earth, go ahead and go, hang out there in my place? That's the thing. I really don't know where they're going to go with it, because obviously it seemed like Fury and them, they're working together. Yeah. It's not like he's a captive. So I really don't know. But again, a lot can happen in 30 years. Maybe Nick Fury doesn't, have a falling out with Captain Marvel somewhere. That doesn't make sense, though, because the whole beeper thing. I don't know. The point is, it opens up a lot of questions, a question that it's fine this movie didn't answer, because it's the beginning. Or the end. I don't know. I still don't know where the phase ends. It's wishy-washy. Yes, it's phasing. So, Katie, would you recommend Spider-Man Far From Home? I would recommend it, and I'm also probably going to see it again at least one more time. I'm going to make all the people see it. Just not in theaters, probably. I'm not that guy. I'm going to try, actually, to orchestrate a trip to the movie theaters this weekend when I go visit other friends and make them all see it. Well, that I support. Already. But yes, I would 100% recommend it. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I almost liked it more than Homecoming. Different movies. Yeah, that's why they're good for different reasons. Yes, but I really liked it, and I really like it as the initial push into the new whatever we're getting, because it was a great. It felt self-contained enough that I enjoyed it solely on its own, but also I can't wait to see what it does next. Absolutely. So, would you recommend Spider-Man Far From Home? I sure would. 2 thumbs up. For pretty much the same reasons that you said. It, as a self-contained Spider-Man movie, it works pretty well, though if you haven't seen any of the MCU, there might be a few moments where you're like, I don't know what's going on. But the movie itself, it's got a lot of fun action, some really cool creative use of the webs. Yeah. There's some really cool, there's that moment where, and then there's we get the spider sense, gets a whole, thing, it's called the Peter Tingle down, don't worry about it. Don't call it that. And he catches the guy right as he's trying to shoot him in the head. Great moments, little things like that. Fun, action-packed, especially if you don't know anything about Mysterio, there's going to be that moment where you're like, what?
Yeah, I sort of...
Mysterio is MJ's dad? That's not true. That was a reference.
I knew enough to be like, oh, well, it's weird that they're spinning it this way, but whatever. But, like, even I still was like, oh, dang.
Right.
And the way they tied it in.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you know all of this if you're watching this because you've seen it, and if... Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I would absolutely recommend it.
So, that is a wrap on Spider-Man Far From Home.
It sure is. You all surely know the drill by now. You know, if you like this video, please like, subscribe, share.
Feel free to leave us a comment saying how much you enjoyed this video or just the movie itself.
And yeah, as always, we've been Cady and Cady, and we'll see you... Do we even know when the next Marvel movie's coming out?
I guess not. I assumed it was going to be like Black Widow next year, but they haven't said anything at all.
Yeah, we don't even know what the next Marvel movie is.
I don't know what to do with my life. This has never happened.
Yeah, so, yeah. I guess we'll see you in December for Star Wars?
Surely there'll be a movie before Star Wars.
Well, yeah, probably, but,
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
That's probably good enough, right?
I think so, yeah.
All right, I know you're tired. You should probably get going.
Yes, indeed. Oh, thank you.
All right. So.
Do you think they noticed?
Yeah, the YouTube viewers, they're not that observant.
Oh shit, we still recording.
Ooh, yeah, I got it.
Spider-Man doesn't look right. He looks like cheap ass Spidey wearing the Nike shoes. I can see